since Micah Parsons has been back, he might be the best player in the entire league. I mean, it's pretty incredible for a defensive lineman to have this level of impact, and the results are clear. When he's on the field, they're a different animal.
Yeah.
A.J. Brown, touchdown. They're doing the rolling with kid and play dance. Is that what they're doing right there? I guess they're friends again.
After you run the ball so much, this is just called a pop pass. You fake the run, you get everybody into the line of scrimmage, and then you pull the ball and throw the pop pass. That's a tough offense to stop when they're operating like this.
Well, I guess the vibes in Philly are okay after all. Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast, presented by Verizon. The NFL powered by Verizon 5G. I am your host, Dave Helman. And yeah, week 15 delivered the goods. Not even sure where to start in a week where so many big time games happen, so many opportunities to make a statement. Eagles got their vibes back in the battle for Pennsylvania. Bills melted the scoreboard again. Josh Allen made his MVP case. The wild card picture came into view. We saw some teams lock up some playoff spots. It came fast and furious. So let's just jump right into it. As per usual, we go through the recap show with our Sunday Six, the 6 biggest storylines we think you need to know from a busy day of action in the NFL. We don't have a moment to lose, so let's jump right in. For the first item on this week's Sunday Six, we're going to start maybe not with the most entertaining game of week 15, but I thought the most impressive in a week full of statement opportunities, games with playoff implications. The Philadelphia Eagles, to me, made the loudest statement of all late Sunday afternoon in Philadelphia. They beat the 10-win Pittsburgh Steelers 27-13. And if you disagree with me, let's reset the scene, because everything feels hunky-dory when you win by 14 points. But this felt like a team in turmoil earlier this week. They were coming off of that last gasp win against Carolina, way too close for comfort. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are frustrated by the lack of a passing game. Brandon Graham jumps in the mix and adds fuel to the fire when he says maybe it's not all good between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. How is an 11-win team dealing with this much drama? Lot at stake, just in the sense of quieting down the critics, and I really don't think this game could have gone any better. The Eagles win by 2 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts goes off 25 of 32 for 290 yards and 2 touchdowns. He rushes for another one. Don't miss the celebrations. They can tell you a lot. A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts did the kid and play celebration after their touchdown. A.J. Brown himself says afterwards, that was our moment to tell everybody to shut up. They absolutely did. The Eagles offense looked dynamic on both facets, and they did it not without Saquon Barkley. He played a role in this game, 19 carries for 65 yards, but he went in the blue medical tent at one point in this game. He was in and out. Kenny Gainwell was as big a part of the offense as he's been all season. So to do it in a game where Saquon Barkley is not dominating the line of scrimmage, I felt was really impactful. And on top of that, perhaps the drive of the year in the NFL is the way this game finished. It was not dramatic because the Eagles took the ball with 10.5 to play and just simply didn't give it back. Like 1940s football in full effect. The Eagles leading Pittsburgh, again, a vaunted defense. We know about that front. We know how talented they are. Eagles get the ball with 10:29 to play and proceed to drive 88 yards over 21 plays and just kneel the clock out. They convert 4 third downs and a 4th. Quite simply, don't give the ball back. Do you know how dominant you have to be in the trenches to run 21 plays in the NFL? I guarantee you that is one of the proudest accomplishments of Jeff Stoutland, the legendary O-line coach in Philly, and all of those guys, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, so much talent, so many accomplishments on that offensive line. It's got to be one of the proudest moments of their careers to simply steal Pittsburgh's soul in the last 10 minutes of that game. The Eagles dominated time of possession in the second half. 3 possessions, 13 plays for a field goal, 13 plays for a touchdown, 21 plays, and you're kneeling out the clock after not letting Pittsburgh have the ball in the final 10 and a half minutes of the game. Steelers are the first NFL team to only have 2 second half possessions since 2009. They quite simply couldn't get the football. And of course, it hinges on Najee Harris's fumble right outside the red zone. Pittsburgh was driving in to potentially tie this game late in the third, but Najee fumbles on a toss sweep. Maybe this is a completely different game, but I guess we'll never know because Philly quite simply didn't give the ball back after that. And on a day where he had more than 300 total yards of offense and 3 touchdowns, very much silencing the critics, it was not surprising to see Jalen Hurts be honored as Tom Brady's LFG Player of the game.
Jalen Hurts, what a day, man. 25 of 32, 290, great rating. You're so efficient from the start. Tell me about what that passing game, what really clicked today, because you guys were on fire from the start.
Well, man, I'm telling you, look, you beat me a couple times, and now you're giving me trophies, man. That's how you do it.
Hey, you earned it. What are you talking about?
Well, no, it's tons of respect for you. Love seeing what you're doing right now, and I just think, you know how it is playing this game and playing this position. It's all about finding the rhythm, you know, and for all 11 to be on the same page when we go out there and execute. And I think we were able to find a good rhythm this year, a rhythm that we hadn't found for a long time this year, but that's what great teams are able to do, win in multiple ways, and I think we showed that we can win in this way as well. So it was a great team game, team win.
Yeah, it sure was, and I think that rhythm that you talk about, too, in the pass game, what I loved, and I told my partner KB up here all day, was like just seeing you catch that ball, find AJ, and just that ball comes out of your hands. Like, that was the most rhythmic I've seen in a long time. Is there anything different today that you were seeing? Because to me, you're unstoppable when you play like that.
Well, I think just like I said throughout the week, you know, I've talked a long time about continuity and building a rhythm and being on the same page. And I just think, you know, after everything we kind of went through this week, we were able to find that. And I think we're kind of forced to find it, but it was all for the better. And so, you know, you have those different voices and different rhythms and different dynamics changing throughout from year to year. It's so important to find that chemistry, you know, with the OC and our vision and what we're trying to do. And I'm hoping we continue to trend in the right direction and we'll be able to win football games in multiple ways moving forward.
Yeah. Hey, one thing I'm thinking about every time I see that tush push is how do you feel about that? I did a lot of sneaks, but no one was pushing me, and I didn't get hit that much, but I see your neck bent back. Tell me what a Monday morning's like after 3 or 4 of those in a game.
Monday morning's fine, man. Monday morning's fine, especially after a win. She just said, you know, that's 10 wins in a row, and that sounds amazing, but 11 sounds better. We just want to keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, you're a great team player. Love watching you play. Keep it up, man, and we'll see you down the road. Congratulations.
Every game that I broadcast, I award the LFG Player of the Game to that one player who makes me say, let's go.
It's not all bad news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Even with the loss, they saw the Miami Dolphins and the Indianapolis Colts lose on Sunday. So they have clinched a playoff spot. Even in a double-digit loss in Philly, they assure themselves a place in the postseason. Good to know, but no time to feel happy about that. A, they come up woefully short. B, they got some problems to worry about. TJ Watt, once again, a force in this game. 7 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, forced a fumble of Jalen Hurts, suffers an ankle injury late in this one, and it's a short week for Pittsburgh. They've got Baltimore on Saturday, and then the Christmas game against Kansas City. No time to be banged up. No time to not have your defensive player of the year candidate. It's going to be a quick turnaround for the Steelers as they cope with their first big loss of their time starting Russell Wilson. You know, they lost that blizzard game to Cleveland. I don't really hold that against them, but not great on offense against the Eagles. They desperately need George Pickens back from that hamstring issue that held him out on Sunday, and they need for TJ Watt to be on the mend as quickly as possible to keep their momentum heading into the postseason. As for the Eagles, on top of just getting this great narrative win, all of a sudden, number 1 seed in the NFC is completely in play. Their 10th straight win is the longest in Eagles franchise history. They are on a winning streak that is longer than anything they did in 2022 or 2023. And now they've got a chance to steal the number 1 seed because the Lions fell for the first time since September on Sunday, which we will get into now. Second item on our Sunday 6 is our Victory Unlocked. It's brought to you by Zillow. Agents, tours, loans, homes. Obviously, one of the most anticipated matchups of Sunday, the Buffalo Bills traveling to Detroit to face the Lions. And goodness gracious, it did not disappoint. Another week, another game where the Buffalo Bills stockpile points and yards. They beat Detroit 48-42 on the road behind an insane performance from Josh Allen. That is not to ignore an incredible effort from Jared Goff in a loss. Jared Goff, 494 passing yards and 5 touchdowns, and some impressive wheels, I might add, in this loss. Josh Allen is obviously the runner, but Jared Goff making some plays with his feet in just a silly arena football type of game. We're going to dive into it now. Got my guy, Henry McKenna, on with us to break down all things Bills and Lions. And Henry, like, I don't know, man. I need a week to catch my breath with this Buffalo Bills team between the Rams and the Lions. Now, I think I saw the Bills and Lions now set the highest mark of points scored in the league this week, beating last week. So yeah, I just need to catch my breath. I think that's my main takeaway from this game.
Yeah, I mean, I loved basically all of it. When you have Josh Allen on one side of the ball, you're going to see electric, crazy playmaking. And this year more than ever, we've seen like fewer boneheaded decisions. We've seen almost none, to give him credit where credit's due. On the other side of the ball, you might have a very controlled and poised quarterback in Jared Goff, but you've got a very brash and very wild and potentially out of control coach in Dan Campbell. So no shortage of points, no shortage of wild and electric moments.
Okay. You mentioned Dan Campbell, and I think that's going to be the flashpoint that people go back to in this game is Dan Campbell's decision to go onside with roughly 12 minutes to play in a game that the Bills had just the Lions had just cut to 10 points with most of the fourth quarter to play. I'm curious for your take on this because I get it. It's early. You can play this thing out, but the way the Bills were moving the ball on offense, I don't know how much I blame Dan Campbell for trying to steal a possession rather than just continue to watch the Lions defense give up yards and points the way they were.
Yeah, so basically when that decision happened, I trust Dan Campbell enough to give it as much credit as I could possibly give it in terms of, is he seeking momentum? Is he seeking something counterintuitive? I think the best thing that you could argue for him is that by going for the onside kick, you're actually shortening the field, and therefore you're taking away the Bills' ability to bleed clock, which gives the Lions a better chance of building a comeback, right? That's the only defense I can give for Dan Campbell. It is, in my opinion, still an indefensible decision. Historically, we know and have seen that basically the onside kick is a 5% chance proposition. Do we really think that the Lions defense had less than a 5% chance of generating, anything less than a touchdown? That's kind of where I think this decision got off the rails. And ultimately it goes back to like a really simple fundamental element of decision making. It's like, I get that you want to be different, but like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like there were 12 minutes left. Just like let your defense go out there and play defense. Like we don't need to let Mac Hollins return that down to the 5-yard line it's like letting them score. Like you don't gain anything out of that with 12 minutes left in the game.
I think that's a really good point. Like if the numbers were better on recovering onside kicks, maybe this is a more a tightly contested decision, but it's so overwhelmingly in the favor of the receiving team. I get your point. And on top of that, I mean, the Bills were incredible. Obviously, Josh Allen, just unbelievable stuff. Like his throw to Keon Coleman late in the first half of this game, 52-yarder down the field on the scramble. He runs for 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. But what's crazy is even things that looked like they were going to break against the Bills didn't. Like, you get Matt Collins to return that onside kick all the way down into the red zone. And then later on in the fourth quarter, when the Lions have another chance to claw back into it, Josh actually misfires on a throw to Dawson Knox that could have set up a punting situation, and he just reels in this circus catch to pick up the first down and keep the clock moving. It just felt like, even though like the Bills were good, and on top of that, they were just living right in this game.
Yeah, Josh Allen was going to like what has sort of become his like marquee special play right now, which is like scramble to the right after breaking anywhere between 1 and like 6 tackles. And then he just kind of like sends somebody deep and then he chucks it downfield. I actually think it's like a skill that he's honed though, in that like, I think he throws that sort of like direct line right down the sideline, which is not an easy pass to make, even though he makes it look easy. He does that better than anyone in the NFL right now through traffic. So yeah, I think like you're saying, you know, it's been that kind of season for Josh Allen, like especially looking even going back to the early phase of this year where I was trying to get a sense of whether Josh Allen had really changed his decision making. The interceptions were down, but like, was he actually getting lucky? Was he unlucky last year? How did the numbers like suss out in a stat that can be misleading, like interceptions? And the more I dug in, the more I saw that Josh Allen had not totally changed. He was still a gunslinger. But I think we've seen enough of this body of work. And it's like Mahomes, right? Like, we give Mahomes credit now, even when he's not like amazing. We still give him credit for winning the game for his team because we just see him do it every week where he's managing the game so carefully. I actually think Josh Allen is doing a little bit of that, managing the game, but also just like has like a nuclear offense. Like, he just creates explosive plays. He manages the game. He's really genuinely doing it all. Like, he's playing quarterback at a position and at a level that you just don't really see often in this league. It's remarkable.
It's hard not to think about last year where Josh kind of caught fire. I think the Bills were 500 heading into the final month of the season and managed to go on this run and steal the division from the Dolphins. He's doing all of that again, and very easy to argue much better, fewer mistakes, more offensive output. I mean, this game is completely ridiculous. 1,080 yards of offense, 90 combined points, 58 total first downs between the team. And that's the last thing I want to touch on, is just somebody was going to win this game, and you take down a contender, you're going to feel good heading into the next week. But both of these teams have to be begging that they can get healthy here over the last 3 weeks of the season, because this is not sustainable. Obviously, I mean, we just saw Buffalo lose a game like this last week. And now you look at the losses on the Lions defense as well, everything that they're dealing without. This was very fun, but even for the winning team, I'm worried about health and the overall, well-roundedness of your team when you're talking about defenses that are this decimated and are struggling this much to get stops.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills went into this game without Damar Hamlin, Taylor Rapp, Rasul Douglas. That's 3 of the starting members of their secondary. And then, like, not for fun, but just for the sake of it, let's riddle off some of the names that got injured in this game. They saw Matt Milano get banged up. They saw their other safety, Cole Bishop, get banged up. One of their linebackers went down. Spencer Brown, offensive tackle, went down. So we've accounted for what, like 60, 70% of their defense, maybe more. And so I think ultimately it's a situation where, the Bills, if Bills Mafia is listening, they're probably saying, this happens to us every year. And actually, I think that's why the Bills really cleaned house on defense this offseason. Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White. I don't know if I can't remember if I mentioned Matt Milano getting injured in this game. I'm pretty sure I did, but
he also did. Yeah. It's a lot to keep track of.
It is. And so I think like you go back to the offseason, you see them making an effort to get younger. This is sort of why, is because they keep dealing with injuries and they just keep getting the bad luck. The one thing I will say, and it's a credit to Sean McDermott, is that he is better than anyone at creating situational success for players. You know, I wrote last week about how he's not very good at game management, and I think he had a good game managing this one. But the one thing he does better than, maybe, he makes him a top 5 coach at this particular thing, is maximizing the talent of backups and helping them elevate into key parts of their defense without costing them games. It's a quality that Bill Belichick for years succeeded at, and it's how they ultimately won Super Bowls. Belichick was a better game manager, and that's where McDermott really needs to improve over the next, I would say, 6 games or whatever it will be. But yeah, I think that's sort of where the Bills sit in terms of injuries is, it's a bad situation, and can McDermott keep making the magic that he's got a history of making?
All of that applies to the Lions as well. I mean, Alim McNeill goes out in this game for Detroit. Obviously, a rash of injuries going all the way back to Aiden Hutchinson in the first half of the season. It's going to be interesting to see how both of these teams deal with that, because you have an offense that can win you a Super Bowl, but again, I need a little bit more. And I understand these are MVP candidate quarterbacks. I think that's what today was all about. You knew this was going to be an offensive showcase. But like I said, I think both of these teams are going to be searching for answers to get just a little bit more from their defenses, because it's a recipe for disaster in the playoffs being this unbalanced, in my opinion. But man, Bills 1 week off of such a disappointing loss, they get this big win against the top dog in the NFL, looking like they are right in the mix. We'll see if they can catch the Chiefs, even with the Patrick Mahomes injury. It feels like it might be too little too late, but you never know. It should be a wild finish. And Henry, we will definitely check in with you about it later on. I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you, Dave. Good to see you.
I touched on this with Henry just now, and we can't really mention the Bills without touching on what happened with the Kansas City Chiefs. They beat the Cleveland Browns 21-7 on Sunday. Game itself, not really worth dwelling on. The Browns struggled with turnovers, just like we thought they might, and the Chiefs were in control virtually the entire way, 21-7 in Cleveland. What matters, though, is that at the tail end of this game, Patrick Mahomes got dogpiled. Guy's been getting sacked, pressured, hit for the last month or so. He exits with an ankle injury that assuredly the entire NFL world will be watching for the foreseeable future. Andy Reid mentioned it after the game on Sunday.
Patrick, his right ankle has been hurt. It's not broken, but it's sore, and he'll get started on the rehab part of it as we go, and then we'll just have to see how he does down the road here.
Obviously wishing the best for Patrick Mahomes. It's not the goal to make light of an injury, but this throws the AFC playoff picture not quite into turmoil, but definitely a little bit more uncertainty than we thought before. The Chiefs 13-1. They do have a 2-game lead on the Bills, but the Bills do have that tiebreaker. And depending on Mahomes' health, this could be a much more uncertain finish to the season than we would have guessed heading into Sunday's games. And this is where the Chiefs can be a little bit of a victim of their own success. The next 10 or so days are going to be brutal for the Kansas City Chiefs. They are on a short week. They host the Houston Texans on Saturday. Then they turn around and play a road game on Christmas Day at the Pittsburgh Steelers, also obviously in the thick of the playoff race. That's 2 games on short rest. The back-to-back repeat defending champs, of course, you're going to be playing a lot of national games Sunday, Saturday, Thursday. We don't know how much of it Patrick Mahomes will be available for. It is going to be the storyline to monitor here in the NFL this week. Will Mahomes be available? If he's not, how much time is he expected to miss? Obviously, Chiefs have already wrapped up the division. They have the best record in football. But, like I said, the chase for the number 1 seed just at least slightly more uncertain than I would have guessed heading into today, especially after the Bills got that wild win. The third item on our Sunday 6 is that the NFC North really is just built different. Even on a day that the Detroit Lions lost, the toughest division in football continued to prove exactly that. Green Bay Packers went on the road to Seattle. Sunday Night Football, big spot for a surging Seahawks team to announce themselves as the real deal. all the preseason or pregame storylines we talked about in the lead up to this game. And the Green Bay Packers just go up and cruise a 30-13 beating of Seattle on prime time. It's important to note, Geno Smith did exit this game midway through the third quarter with a knee injury. Wishing him the best as we're recording this. We haven't heard anything about that. Hopefully it's not a too serious of an issue, though he didn't return to the game. Respectfully, though, do not think it would have made a difference. The Seahawks had managed just one scoring drive when Geno got hurt. They were trailing 20-3. Offense was bottled up to the tune of 208 total yards of offense. I guess I want to say this, though, before we get too much deeper into what this means for both teams, let's show some appreciation for Geno Smith, who has made it work all year with this offense that ground to a halt without him. Sam Howell entered after the injury, averaged less than 2 yards per attempt in relief of Geno. He was sacked 4 times and threw a pick on 19 dropbacks. Really feels like whatever hope the Seahawks have of rallying in these last 3 games hinges on Geno being available, especially when you consider their next game, another primetime showing against the NFC North team they just helped into the playoffs. How's it feel to be a Minnesota Vikings fan on Sunday night, watching your hated rival win, but knowing that a Seahawks loss gets you into the playoffs? Think the Vikings will take it. Let's take it back to the Seahawks, though, because I think there were a few truly deflating performances in Week 15, and this is one of them, man. Talked about Geno and the injury, talked about the offense's inability to get anything going. Just as bad of a performance for Seattle's revamped defense. They got bullied. Packers jumped out to a hot start, methodically drove the ball on their first 3 possessions, and they honestly never really looked back. They ran for 140 yards. That Seattle run defense, their improvement over the last month had been such a big storyline. Was no match for Green Bay's ground game. Jordan Love had his second best passer rating of the season. Romeo Doubs hit him up for 2 touchdowns. Just adding insult to injury, a game that was already over. Romeo Doubs makes a circus catch in the final few minutes of this one to make it look even more lopsided. Packers defense, 7 sacks on the night, 2 takeaways. If you don't know the name, maybe you saw him after the game was over. Edgerrin Cooper, the rookie linebacker and situational pass rusher out of Texas A&M. Sack and an interception, had a shot at another interception. So you got your young defense rounding into form if you're Green Bay. It's, missed opportunities against the Detroit Lions. Looks like they're comfortably going to finish in 3rd place in their division, and they're still capable of going on the road and putting a beat down like this on a team that had been winning its division. Green Bay couldn't clinch a playoff spot. They knew that going into this game. A playoff spot was off the table for this weekend, but the win does basically make it a formality. So Detroit, Minnesota, mathematically into the playoffs. And last time I looked at the numbers, it was more than a 99% chance that the Green Bay Packers will be in the playoff field as well. Even with that Lions loss to Buffalo, the NFC North, 29-4 against non-division teams this season. And now, mentioning it with Geno's injury, it's crazy to me to think about what the Seahawks lost in this game. Obviously, you lose the chance to make an impression on national TV. You lose the game. You had to watch Green Bay fans take over your building. Well, when I was getting into covering the NFL a decade plus ago, Seattle was one of the most feared places to play a big-time game in the NFL. I thought we might see that in this game with so much on the line. Packer fans took that place over. Listening to Go Pack Go chants in Seattle, not something I had on my bingo card at the end of the day. So for keeping track of it all, Seahawks started the day with a chance to really get the inside track on the NFC West. They lose Geno Smith. They lose by 17 points. And now they are outside the playoff field. The Rams' ugly win against the 49ers on Thursday puts LA into first place in the NFC West. Seattle Seahawks, now a wild card team. They've got to try to, we'll see what happens with Geno. We'll see how they do against the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe they can set themselves up in a rematch with LA to regain the division lead in week 18. But across the board, not how you wanted this day to go if you're a Seattle Seahawks fan. Keeping with our theme of wildcard teams, the fourth item in the Sunday Six is just going to be a look around the wildcard picture, which is rapidly gaining a lot of clarity. We're not going to know the order of everyone or the seeding. There's still some division titles up for grabs, but it's starting to look pretty clear what the playoff field is going to look like. 7 spots have already been claimed with 3 weeks to play, and you can kind of read the tea leaves about who else might make the playoffs. Now, we're going to run through the games that affected the wild card picture, and none had a more dramatic finish than what happened in New Orleans in the early window on Sunday. Talked about it in the preview episode. It's a game the Washington Commanders should win, but if they don't, it could create some chaos. And oh my gosh, did Washington try to put this to the test? Commanders led this game 17-0. Honestly, one of those situations where you start looking at other games, start trying to see what else you need to be following, because the Commanders had this thing in the bag until they didn't. New Orleans swapped quarterbacks at halftime. Jake Haener out, Spencer Rattler in. And the rookie, Spencer Rattler, he had some moments. The first time Derek Carr got hurt, he does it again. He led the Saints in a 19-3 rally in the final 20 minutes, and it was almost a 21-3 rally because Rattler ties the game up on the final play of regulation, finds Foster Moreau for a touchdown, and I love it. Saints, you're not going anywhere. We're playing for pride at this point. You got an interim head coach. We're going for 2. We're going to try to beat the team with playoff hopes. We're going to try to put a dent in their hopes of being a wild card. They go for 2 and the win. They don't get it by the width of a fingernail. They lose the game. Commanders hold on for the win, but I applaud the decision. And a game that looked all but over turns into one of the best finishes of the day. Had a chance to catch up about it with Kenny Albert and Jonathan Vilma, who were on the call for a crazy one at the Caesars Superdome. Guys, I got to be honest, even as late as midway through the third quarter, I did not see this one coming down to the final snap. What can you tell me about the spark that Spencer Rattler gave the Saints in this game?
Well, Dave, Jaden Daniels and the Commanders were in control. They had a 14-0 lead at the half, but the Saints did insert Spencer Rattler to begin the second half, and they nearly won this game.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler, the biggest difference was he wasn't thinking. He was just out there playing. And the first half, Haener was thinking too much and wanted to make the perfect throw, and because of that, taking sacks, taking hits. And Rattler instead said, if my first read isn't there, I'm throwing to the check down. If I think my first read's there, I'm throwing it, right? And he didn't waste time. So that was really the biggest difference. The efficiency at the quarterback position with Rattler in there in the second half made all the difference for the Saints.
So much of this Commanders season has been about Jaden and their offense. Do you think it does anything for their confidence level as a team to have the defense pull this one out at the end? I mean, probably closer than they'd prefer, but that does feel like a significant development.
Most definitely. You want to be challenged as a defense. And Bobby Wagner, we spoke with him prior to the game, and he said that these are the moments that they need to have. They need to be successful in order to gain more confidence, because now you can go in and say, it's not all about Jaden Daniels in our offense. You can leave it up to us, especially late in the season, in the playoffs, if they make it. You got to rely on defense. So for them to come out, win it defensively, that's a huge plus for the Commanders.
Such a fun game down in New Orleans. Guys, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
It's crazy for me to think about how much changed off of one 2-point conversion attempt in this game in New Orleans. With the win, by holding on, breaking up that pass, Commanders, first of all, they secure their first winning record since 2015. They are 9-5. That is their best record through 14 games since the 1992 season. So for starters, there's that, a guaranteed winning record, and your best record at this point in the year in generations. It's got to feel good for Commanders fans, even if it was stressful. More importantly, they bumped their odds of making the playoffs as high as 80%, and they keep themselves a game ahead of Seattle and LA. If they allow that 2-point conversion to be completed, They're tied on record. They do have the tiebreaker, but you're tied on record with 2 other teams heading into the final 3 games. This would have opened up the field to a variety of other teams. Arizona, Atlanta also could be in the mix. It's not a done deal, but getting this win makes it exponentially more likely that Washington will be in the playoff, and it's all decided on a 2-point conversion. Love the little swings and momentum changes and moments that make up an NFL season. Jaden Daniels and company, not the only big winners, though. Over in the AFC, the other big one we talked about, Sunday was billed as a wild card elimination game between the Colts and Broncos. And we talked about the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks could give the Colts a run for their money, but man, not many people suffered more heartbreak in week 15 than the Indianapolis Colts. 4-point underdogs on the road. They came to play, at least early on. They jumped out to a 10-0 lead. Anthony Richardson looking more polished than Bo Nix. They forced Bo Nix into the type of mistakes he's avoided for most of the last couple months. 3 interceptions today for Bo Nix. It was looking dicey for the Broncos early. Somehow, though, the Colts managed to make more mistakes. 5 turnovers in this game, and none more backbreaking, more egregious, gonna keep coaches, players, fans awake at night than Jonathan Taylor's miscue early in the 3rd quarter. Veteran running back. He's been doing this for a minute. 41 yards to the house for a touchdown. He's going to put the Colts up 20-7. It's painful to even talk about this. It's going to put the Colts up 20-7 early in the 3rd quarter in a game that not going to put them in the playoffs, but is going to open up that wild card conversation. Broncos looking like they're going to slip, except I'm getting ahead of myself, just as Jonathan Taylor did, because before he actually crossed the goal line, he dropped the ball. He dropped the football. In the year of our Lord, 2024, how is this still happening? Just carry the ball into the end zone. Hand the ball to the referee. You won't have this problem. He drops the ball. It's a turnover. The most embarrassing mistake in a game that the Colts go on to lose 31-13. They don't score again from there. And that was the most embarrassing mistake at all, which is an incredible thing to say in a game where Adonai Mitchell threw a pick 6 on a trick play lateral. Nick Bonito scoring the funniest touchdown of the weekend when he picks off a flea flicker attempt from the wide receiver back to the quarterback. An ugly, ugly day for the Indianapolis Colts. Broncos not complaining. Bo Nix rebounded from the interceptions beautifully, by the way. Wound up throwing 3 touchdown passes as well. Not only do the Broncos bump their playoff probability to 91% with that rally, they also, for good measure, they jump past the LA Chargers for the AFC's number 6 seed, because the Chargers also in a big matchup with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, well, they find themselves outscored 27-0 in the second half. The Buccaneers come out to LA and they whoop the Chargers 40-17. Game I had a chance to catch up with Adam Amin and Mark Sanchez about. Well, guys, look, I know the deep shots to Mike Evans are going to lead the highlight packages, and that's very fun, but I hope people are clocking how dominant this Bucs team is on the ground. It's incredibly impressive to watch.
Nobody had ran like this on the Chargers all season. They're the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. They held really good offensive teams in check. But the Ravens ran for 200, and nobody else had done it until the Bucs today. And you said it at halftime. You wanted to see more from the Tampa Bay ground game. You saw it, sort of the Charger defense.
And they really flipped the script, got back to what they do best, and credit Liam Cohen for that, because I think they came out a little pass happy and then got back to what works for them. And it's a dominating way to win when you can end a game on offense like this, converting a 4th down on the ground. It gives your team so much confidence. Remember, they flew out across the country, played in LA today. That's a great plane ride home. If you're Tampa, those are some of my favorite memories as a player. You go across the country, dominate another team, and you have a blast on that plane ride back.
Yeah, great plane ride, and I heard Todd Bowles say, "I'll see you Wednesday." So nice little.
The off day on Tuesday, I'm sure, is going to feel really good for those
some
guys.
downtime
right?
as well. On the flip side of this too, one more thing I wanted to touch on is This defense is allowing an average of 15 points per game since the bye week. Another incredibly impressive performance. It just kind of feels like everything's rounding into form for the Bucs right now.
Yeah, and again, we'll take into consideration the schedule they played. They played some light opponents. It's going to be quote-unquote light opponents, under 500 teams the rest of the way. This was the game that I think a lot of folks with Tampa Bay had circled for the second half of the year. All right, can you go out on the road, cross-country, beat still a quality LA Charger team that's probably going to be in the AFC playoffs. So I think defensively what they did is going to be crucial, especially going down the stretch. When you pick Justin Herbert, nobody's done that since Carolina in week 2. They got crucial plays all game. They didn't allow a third down. That was a big deal, too.
Exactly right. And you do it without KJ Britt, without one of your safeties in Edwards, without Antoine Winfield Jr., and you have guys step up and make plays. So credit to Todd Bowles and that complicated scheme. It's not easy to scheme up these designer blitzes and designer fronts. There's a lot of communication that goes into that. So to trust these guys that don't get all those reps during the year to execute on game day says a lot about the personnel they have and Todd Bowles and his scheme altogether.
A well-deserved fun flight back for Tampa Bay Buccaneers for sure. Guys, love talking to you. We'll chat soon.
Happy belated, buddy. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. So with all of this said, the wild card picture's suddenly not looking very hard to figure out. Let's keep it in the AFC for starters, where your wild card field is currently Baltimore, Denver, and the Chargers. And there's really not that much else to consider. Of course, Baltimore could still win their division. Maybe the Steelers wind up in there somewhere. Houston Texans secured the AFC South, so don't need to worry about that. But other than those 3 wild card teams, Baltimore, Denver, LA Chargers, nobody else in the AFC has a mathematic chance above 10% to reach the postseason. Colts, 10%. The Dolphins, after their loss to Houston, 7%. The Bengals did beat the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. That bumps their percentage up to 6%. So I'll give those guys their due respect and say it's not impossible. It sure as heck feels improbable. It's looking likely, even with 3 weeks to play, some combination of an AFC North team and these 2 AFC West teams, Denver and LA, they're going to be your wild cards. It's not that much murkier in the NFC. Current wild cards over there. Minnesota has secured themselves a playoff berth. You got Green Bay, who, like I said, it's basically a formality. They'll, at some point in the next 3 weeks, clinch it. And then Washington doing themselves a lot of favors. Seahawks and Falcons are the only teams outside the playoff picture that currently have more than a 12% chance to make the playoffs. But I would argue both of those teams have a better chance of getting in as the winner of their division than as a wild card. Go figure. That's how strong the NFC North has been. 2 of those 3 spots are spoken for, and Washington did themselves a lot of favors holding off the Saints on Sunday. So there's still plenty of room for movement, but man, I've been doing this for a minute, and it's hard to remember a year where we felt so certain about so many playoff teams, particularly not even the division winners, but the wild cards. It looks, for the most part, wrapped up. Not quite ready to say they're part of the wild card race, but the Dallas Cowboys just keep kind of hanging around. They were road underdogs against the Carolina Panthers. Carolina favored for the first time in 2 years on Sunday. You would not know it as the Cowboys run away with a 30-14 win over Bryce Young and co. Like I said, not a good chance, but technically a chance. So you're telling me there's a chance for the Dallas Cowboys. Greg Olsen and Joe Davis were on the call. And as I watched this game, I was just struck by what could have been for the Dallas Cowboys. And with speculation swirling about Micah Parsons potentially being a trade piece, it was nice to get a reminder there is still some talent on this Dallas roster, as Greg and Joe saw firsthand. Guys, I know it doesn't amount to much in the real world, but watching Micah Parsons get after Carolina, I couldn't help but think about how different this Cowboys season could have been if this version of the defense was going at the same time as Dak Prescott.
Yeah, it makes you look back to Monday, and that one hurts even more now, right? It's like hot coals on your head.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we talked the entire broadcast about, like, what if this guy doesn't get hurt? What if they win on Monday? Just in what's been a really tough season, injury-riddled, some breaks that have gone against them, and just how close this Cowboys team still is, it's pretty remarkable. And again, that's the NFL. The margins are so small. One break here, one injury, the wrong guy missing time. But since Micah Parsons has been back, he might be the best player in the entire league. I mean, it's pretty incredible for a defensive lineman to have this level of impact, and the results are clear. When he's on the field, they're a different animal.
Yeah. It's been so fun to watch Bryce Young's surge here in the second half of the season. 4 turnovers today, sacked 6 times by Micah and those guys. Was that bad enough that we need to be worried about it damaging his confidence, or do you think he's kind of come through that?
What do you think?
They can't let it. You can't let one bad day overshine what's been a lot of progress and a lot of growth. And a lot of the things that went on today, the turnovers, you got to hold on to the ball. But there was a lot of shared responsibility, right? There was breakdowns in the offensive line. We haven't seen that very often all season long. That's been one of their strengths. Putting the ball in harm's way. Since he's taken back over, that has not been the quarterback that he's been. So, listen, there's going to be bumps in the road. No one is saying he's close to a finished product, but I think there's been more good than bad. Obviously today on the bad side of the spectrum, but they've got 3 more games, and they've got to build as many positive moments, as many positive games as they can, as they continue to try to put this thing back together.
Against all odds, a winning record is still in play for the Dallas Cowboys. Guys, as always, appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Like I said, the probabilities will tell you, even with the win, it sits at like a 1% chance that the Cowboys make the postseason. But what's interesting about this is thinking of what 2025 will hold for the Cowboys. There is a lot of uncertainty with this team, a lot of veterans nearing the end of their contracts. Dak Prescott dealing with an injury. We found out over the weekend, star cornerback Trayvon Diggs is now dealing with a knee injury. That's a few days after finding out they might lose promising young linebacker DeMarvion Overshown for all of 2025 after he injured his knee on Monday Night Football. A lot of uncertainty. And on top of that, you get a Sunday morning report that the Cowboys haven't ruled out trading Micah Parsons. And Micah gets his chance to weigh in after beating Carolina. And he says, I understand how the business side of this thing goes. There are no hard feelings. I've just stated that I want to be here, but at the end of the day, I get it. All I know is I'm going to play hard. Micah Parsons, like I said with Joe and Greg, watching him terrorize Bryce Young makes you wonder. I don't think the Cowboys were ever going to be a real deal contender with what they failed to do this offseason. But with a healthy Micah and a healthy Dak, I bet their chances of making the playoffs would be much, much higher than they are right now. Micah's going to be in line to be the highest paid defender in football starting as soon as this season is over. Get ready for another long, probably frustrating season of updates coming out of Dallas as they wrangle with this latest major contract that they've got to work through. For the 6th and final item in our Sunday 6, I wanted to stop down and take a look at the NFL MVP conversation because I really feel like it crystallized on Sunday. And we're not declaring a winner. I'm already seeing that going around even during the games on Sunday. Saw a lot of people declaring the MVP race over. It's easy to jump to that conclusion when you see what Josh Allen did against Detroit. And if I had to bet today, I would roll with Josh Allen to win MVP this year, but I don't think it's quite as over as other people think. I want to walk ourselves through this, but let's start with him. We've talked about the Bills, but man, I think it's worth giving Josh Allen a few more minutes of shine after the day that he had. 362 passing yards, 68 rushing yards, 4 total touchdowns. If you go back to that Sunday night snow game against San Francisco, Josh Allen has now scored 14 touchdowns in his last 3 games. Absolutely going ballistic. He is on an absurd pace. 37 total touchdowns this season. Obviously, the Bills are at 11-3. They've ended not just 1, but 2 major winning streaks this season. They stopped the Chiefs' winning streak of 15 games. They just now stopped the Lions' winning streak of 12 games. You could argue they've got 2 of the best wins in the NFL this season. And here's the stat that I want to share with you that you can then take to the water cooler, take it to the group chat, impress your friends with it. I love it a lot. With that win against Detroit, 48 points, the Bills have now scored 30 or more points in 8 straight games. That dates back to when they beat Tennessee 34-10. They're averaging 35 points per game over the last 8 weeks, 7-1 record. 8 straight games with 30 or more points is now tied for the longest streak of such games in NFL history. And I'll tell you what makes that so interesting. The other teams that have done it scored 30 or more 8 straight times. The 2013 Denver Broncos, who had Peyton Manning win NFL MVP. The 2010 New England Patriots, Tom Brady, NFL MVP. The 2007 New England Patriots, Tom Brady, MVP. And the 2000 St. Louis Rams, Marshall Faulk, NFL MVP. So this type of offensive production is almost always accompanied by a player that wins NFL MVP. The Bills have already clinched the AFC East. They are on the inside track at the number 2 seed, at least a chance at the number 1 seed. We'll see how that goes, but bare minimum, the number 2 seed feels very attainable. All they have to do is outclass the Jets and Patriots over their last 3 games. Those 2 teams, a combined 7-21. If Buffalo can go 3-0, 14 wins would be the highest win total in Bills history. That feels very attainable. Best record in Bills history, number 2 seed in the AFC playoffs, and Josh Allen conceivably finishing with 40-plus touchdowns. Yes, I understand why people are declaring him the MVP 3 weeks ahead of time. But now's the part in the show where we talk about one of the least entertaining games of the week, but one of the most impressive performances. Guy by the name of Lamar Jackson. Maybe you heard of him. The reigning NFL MVP. Ravens beat the Giants 35-14, and Lamar goes 21 of 25 for 290 and 5 touchdowns. Lamar's 6th career game with 5 passing touchdowns and no interceptions. The only guys who are doing it better than him, only guys with more of those games, Drew Brees and Tom Brady. I mean, this was a video game performance all the way. And interestingly enough, Lamar Jackson now sits on 37 touchdowns this season, just like Josh Allen. He had 43 touchdowns in 2019 when he won his first MVP, and only 29 last year when he won MVP. He's on pace for a career high. He's on pace to do better than either of those seasons. Now, the record is an issue. The Ravens are 9-5. They're currently a wild card, but they host Pittsburgh this week. They could tie the Steelers' record if they win and even that season series. So, yes, we know how voters determine the MVP, and wins and losses, whether right or wrong, have a lot to do with it. But the Ravens could win out, finish 12-5, and realistically could finish the season as high as the AFC's number 3 seed. If they were to do that, steal the AFC North from the Steelers, with Lamar putting up his first 4,000-yard passing season with a career high in touchdowns, it should at least be a conversation. We should at least be holding the door open for Lamar Jackson. I think people will grade him very harshly because he is the reigning MVP. I think you really have to wow people to win MVP 2 years in a row, and the Ravens do already have 5 losses. I understand all of that. But again, a guy that's already won the award twice, passing for 4,000 plus and setting a career high in touchdowns. And mind you, 2 of the Ravens' last 3 games are against playoff teams, the Steelers and the Texans. So plenty of opportunity to make big stage statements. Those games are also standalone games. You know, Steelers on a Saturday, Texans on Christmas Day. Plenty of opportunity with a lot of people watching. I'm not ruling Lamar Jackson out just yet. And the other important piece of this is it feels very important that both of these performances happened on the weekend that Saquon Barkley had his most pedestrian day in a while. 65 rushing yards, no touchdowns, his worst output in a month. He's officially fallen off Eric Dickerson's NFL record pace. So all due respect to everything he's accomplished, and for that matter, the Eagles getting a dominant win without him being at his best, whatever momentum there was for a Saquon Barkley MVP, I'm putting it to rest right now. I'll mention Jared Goff as well. The guy did just throw for 490 and 5 touchdowns in the same game that Josh Allen just played. Looks like he's going to break his career high of passing touchdowns. That's 32. He's sitting on 30 after throwing 5 against the Bills. So he's there. I don't think you can rule that out, especially if the Lions finish with the NFC's number 1 seed. I do think the Lions' overall dominance and especially, games that they've won where he didn't play his best or didn't need to be at his best, I wonder if that hurts him in the long run. And that's why sitting here with 3 games to play, yes, Josh Allen, leader in the clubhouse, but I've got a close eye on Lamar Action Jackson because I don't think this thing is done and dusted just quite yet. What is done and dusted is this show. That's all we got for the recap, but not to worry. We will be back in your feeds very soon. Got a Tuesday show to look forward to. We're going to check in with Jay Glazer about all the latest news and updates coming out of the weekend. Maybe get some injury updates from Jay when we chat with him. And we've got 2 Monday night games this week. The Vikings hosting the Bears in the early game. We've also got the Falcons traveling out to Vegas to play the Raiders. So 2 games still to cover before we're done with Week 15. Make sure you subscribe. If you're not, go find us on Spotify. Go find us wherever you get your pods. We will be there on Tuesday morning to wrap this week up and look forward to Week 16, which will be coming quickly, by the way. We've got Thursday Night Football. We got 2 Saturday games to talk about. It's moving fast and furious as we get close to the finish line. Don't miss a show. Make sure you're subscribed, and we will chat with y'all real soon. As always, I appreciate it.